Welcome to the Career Change Podcast, where you'll discover the frank and practical advice and resources that are already proven to work in the real world when it comes to changing careers or figuring out what business is right for you when you are a smart but likely also stuck, overwhelmed or overthinking person in your mid-30s, your 40s, your mid-50s. I'm your host, Rikke Hansen, a career change advisor, entrepreneur and former corporate HR professional with over 15 years experience of helping thousands of people just like you identify or create careers or businesses that are both meaningful and future-proof. Welcome home. Hey, it's Rikke here. Good on you for listening. Welcome to the Career Change Podcast, episode number 50. Why consistency beats perfectionism when it comes to career change. Now, if you've noticed that your perfectionist tendencies are toxic to your career change process, as in they're mostly sabotaging or definitely not helping your career change process, rather than actually improving your career change process or being a benefit to moving your career change along, then this particular episode is going to be a real eye-opener to you, and it's going to help you really change how you approach your career change. And that's really because this episode is designed to help you think differently about what it actually takes to change careers or to start a business, and why, and this is important, why perfection is not actually required or even possible. You'll discover why being a toxic perfectionist might even put a stop to your career change before you ever even get any real traction or any real results. So what we'll talk about is something that might seem really unsexy, but that is absolutely vital when it comes to not just getting going, but to actually keep going till you get what you want. Keep going till you actually make that career change happen or till you actually launch that business. And what we're going to talk about is the C word for toxic perfectionists, and that is consistency. Consistency. And why are we going to talk about consistency? Well, because I know that a lot of you listening, a lot of the Career Change Podcast listeners, I know that a lot of you identify as what, according to the multidimensional perfectionism scale by Hewitt and Fleet, you identify as being self-oriented perfectionists, i.e., you're putting this on yourself, right? You have self-imposed, excessively high personal standards. Right? You're a smart person, but you likely also have a history of being very self-critical and very hard on yourself. And as mentioned, setting impossibly high standards for yourself, and you fear failure more than anything. Does any or some of that sound familiar? And are you also still stuck? You haven't changed careers or started that business yet. You keep getting in your own way, then this episode is for you. Keep listening. Now, the majority of my clients are Gen X or older millennials. And perfectionism can be really ripe. And also, with all generations, it used to be sort of almost seen as a good thing. And a lot of us used to be proud of being perfectionists. However, when you decide that you want to do something different, you want to change careers or you want to start your own business, things can get messy and you can feel far from perfect. And that's when you're put in the situation of doing things you've never done before. That's when your perfectionism can really turn against you, turn toxic, and keep you stuck. Now, I've consistently noticed how those are my clients who self-identify, a self-oriented perfectionist. They can make it harder and more time-consuming and sometimes even impossible for themselves to keep going with their career change. So I've, as you know, if you're regular listeners, I've had over 18 years experience of helping people change careers, start their own business. So that also means I've had over 18 years experience of helping perfectionists manage their toxic tendencies so they can finally change careers and start that business. So I know it is possible for you to do it, right? It is possible. You do not have to stick, you don't have to stay stuck. You can change. You just have to be very aware and you have to manage your toxic perfectionist tendencies. So in this episode, I want to share two really practical suggestions that my clients have found really helpful for how you can get over yourself and into action, even if it initially feels messy and unnatural and imperfect. All right, you can do this. So let's talk about two mindset shifts that I want you to make. And all that I mean by that is we need to talk about we need to change how you talk to yourself inside of your head and what you choose to believe so that you can start, taking imperfect action and get what you actually want, because it's over on the other side of that. So mindset shift number one I want you to make is, and to believe in and to act as if, is that, because that's the truth, it's how things work in the real world. Consistency is more important than perfection if you want to keep going with your career change. Let me repeat that. Mindset shift number one, consistency is more important than perfection if you want to keep going with your career change. Mindset shift number two is to replace perfect inaction with showing up consistently no matter what. Mindset shift number two is to replace perfect inaction with showing up consistently no matter what. All right, so let's go straight into mindset shift number one. Consistency is more important than perfection if you want to keep going with your career change. Now, here's why it is so important to talk about this. Here is why it's so important that you become aware of how toxic and detrimental some of your perfectionist tendencies can be for your career change. I've definitely observed, and scientific studies back this up too, perfectionists give up more easily and earlier on in the process than others. Perfectionists give up more easily and earlier on in the process than others. That is why consistency is so much more important for you to focus on if you actually want to keep going, not just getting started, but keep going with your career change and actually finish it. Change into that different career, that job, or launch that business, actually make that switch. And here's the kicker. Perfectionism is not a requirement for that. Perfectionism is not a requirement for changing careers or starting that business. Consistency is. All right. So a number of years ago, I came across some really interesting studies done by a professor here in the UK called Dr. Andrew P. Hill. He said, back then he was at St. John's University, and he specializes in perfectionism. He's done a ton of studies on perfectionism. I really hope he'll write a book one day or do a podcast or something like that, because he's dedicated his entire life to perfectionism, studying the effects of it. And even though he initially mainly specialized in athletes and exercisers who are, who self-select as self-oriented perfectionists, his studies absolutely also relate to career change and to making a change. Now, there was one particular lab experiment that Dr. Hill did that I found really, really interesting for all purposes here. So in one lab experiment, Dr. Hill gave both perfectionists and non-perfectionists specific goals. But what he didn't tell them was that the test was rigged, i.e. the test was rigged, so none of them would succeed. It was a test that it wouldn't work out, all right? The experiments wouldn't work out. It was rigged. So none of them would succeed. So let's see what happens when they went through this lab experiment. Now, both groups, both the perfectionists and the non-perfectionists, put in the same amount of effort. But one group enjoyed the whole thing a lot less. And here's the catch. They gave up earlier. Now, which group do you think enjoyed this messy process a lot less? And which group do you think gave up earlier? The perfectionists or the non-perfectionists? The perfectionists, of course, right? Now, let's go deeper. Here's another quote from Professor Hill around this lab experiment. Faced with failure, or what I would call the possibility of failure, I insert here, perfectionists tend to respond more harshly in terms of emotions. They experience more guilt, more shame, and they also experience more anger. And here's what I really want to emphasize. Here's what he says, Dr. Hill. They give up more easily. They have quite avoidant coping tendencies when things can't be perfect. End of quote. How about you? Give up more easily? Have avoidant coping tendencies when things can't be perfect? Have you found yourself avoiding or giving up on doing things that you weren't good at quickly or that didn't work out straight away? Or that will make you do imperfect things in public, things you might never have done before? Or have you insisted on perfection with that business or that career and ended up not changing anything, not launching anything? You're still working on it behind the scenes. You're not ready to put it out there. You want to be perfect first, right? I.e., with your career change or with starting a business. You might have had a couple of stabs or one stab, but it never really turned into a habit or a consistent thing or a practice, something that you kept going on with, right? And also just try to think of the rest of your life. You can probably think of examples where you gave up more easily, you didn't keep going with it, and you didn't enjoy it because you weren't perfect at it straight away, right? So you default to this kind of mindset of rather give up than not being perfect. Now, can you relate to this? When I came across these studies from this professor, I was like, whoa, I can think back to examples of this in my own life, but definitely also in my clients' lives in terms of how things got hard or different and it was impossible to do things perfectly, i.e. there were ways in which there might be the possibility of failure, of imperfection, and therefore they chose not to engage, not to keep at it. Oh man. Talk about avoidance, right? You'd rather give up than risk not being perfect, rather give up than risk not doing things perfectly, or even worse, being seen, publicly seen and observed, not doing things perfectly. So you just give up or you enjoy the whole process a lot less. Now, let's talk about why this behavior is so dangerous when it comes to your career change, when it comes to starting a business. And remember the mindset shift here. Consistency is more important than perfection if you want to keep going with your career change. Now, apart from the study, just mentioned the lab study. Professor Hill, he's also done a lot of studies with high performers, especially within sports. And high performers, we can relate to that. A lot of us are type A, high performers in business, in work. All right. So according to him, what do you think is the single biggest predictor of success in sports? What do you think is the single biggest predictor for success in sports? Probably not what you think. It's one word and it's not perfection. It's practice. 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 How about you? You probably want, success with that career change, with that business, but do you practice? Do you have a practice? Do you have a career change practice? Do you keep consistently going with that career change practice? Do you keep doing it even when you don't feel like it? Even when you don't feel like you can do it perfectly? Even when you're not perfect at it right away? Do you keep going with it? Now, practice is like training, right? And practice actually means, according to one dictionary, the act of doing something regularly or repeatedly. Doing something regularly or repeatedly to improve your skill at doing it. Now, here's the thing. The career change is kind of rigged. Not in the sense that it won't work out, but there will be things along the way that won't work out straight away maybe or perfectly. And especially early on, it's going to be impossible to get them perfect or right. But you still got to keep going if you want to get to the stage where you change careers and start that business. And that's where you really need to keep your toxic tendencies, your toxic perfectionist tendencies in check. And I really want to share with you here also, you have got to believe that it's more meaningful for you to change careers or start that business than it is for you to achieve perfection. Okay? That's really, really important. If perfectionism is your main goal in life, you're going to have a really, really hard time changing careers or starting that business. Consistency is a lot more important. All right? Remember, the single biggest predictor of success in sports, according to Dr. Hill, is practice. I would agree with him that it's exactly the same thing for when it comes to predictor of actually someone getting to the stage where they change careers or actually start that business within the career change field. The singles biggest predictor is actually whether it's consistency, or one of the predictors, definitely within the top 3, is consistency. Are they going to stick with it? Are they going to keep going and taking action again and again? In all of the years I've done this work, I can definitely say it's the same thing for career change. It's not intelligence. It's definitely hasn't been my most intelligent clients or my most perfect clients. It's the clients who stuck with the process and who kept going even when they couldn't always do it perfectly, or even when they don't feel like it. All right? How about you? Do you practice consistently? Do you keep at it? Do you keep doing it? Let's talk about your career change or starting that business. Have you made it a practice to keep doing those things that you need in order to make a transition? Or do you start and stop and start and stop? Or do you actually stop or don't even try because you don't feel good at them, perfect at them straight away? Maybe, and I see this with some people, maybe you even have this not reality checked idea that, and I come across some people who have this idea that if it really was your perfect career or your perfect, passion or your perfect business, then doing things related to that should really all come to you naturally and perfectly and immediately. And it should just feel right. And you should always feel like doing it. And that you really shouldn't have to work too hard at it. It shouldn't feel hard. And that you can't risk doing things that you're not good at immediately. Now, forget about that. That's not how things work in the real world. Consistency beats perfection. You're not supposed to be perfect at things straight away, and things are not supposed to feel easy all the time. If that's the mindset you have, that's probably a big reason why you're stuck. Now, if you work with me as a client, then I always help you identify strengths and skills and achievements you can build on that would help you, that you already have, but there will be elements that will be new to you, that will push your perfectionist buttons. And there will be new skills that you have to learn, things that you have to expose yourself to that you can't be perfect at straight away. But don't let that stop you and think you have to be perfect straight away. It has to feel right straight away. No, get over yourself, my friend. If you want to reinvent your career, you want to change careers, you want to start a business, then you are going to, especially in the early stages, do things that you've never done before. You're going to have to take action. You're going to do things that'll make you feel comfortable and that are literally impossible to get right or perfect straight away. And that might even result in failure or could result in failure. And this is really where toxic, maladaptive perfectionism is so toxic to your career transition. If you insist on perfectionism, if you are a perfectionist, a toxic kind of perfectionist, when it comes to your career transition, then here's what's going to happen. As a maladaptive, toxic perfectionist, you're going to see every new uncomfortable thing to do with your career transition or new business as an opportunity to fail. And therefore, you are might not going to enjoy it. You're going to give up early because you are not getting it perfect straight away. So therefore, and I see this happening with a number of people, you therefore don't allow yourself to actually even try very hard, or you give up early, or you don't even try. And you definitely do not allow it to go all in and do it imperfectly. A lot of times what I see toxic perfectionists do actually is half-assing it. Rather than really engaging with the process and feel uncomfortable and risking doing things imperfectly, they half-ass it. They just do window shopping. They half-ass their career change because they don't dare risking failure. Or maybe they try it, but then they realize they're not perfect or good at it initially. And then they try to avoid doing more of it. And that means they stop early. Because here's the thing. What is it that happens when you don't do things repeatedly? Well, you never get to the practice stage. You never do things again and again. You never get to the practice stage. And if you never get to the practice stage of actually getting into the habit of doing career change things again and again, you'll never change careers. You're never going to start that business, right? So just think back. This is really important. Just think back to the last 6 months or 12 months or however many months or years or decades you wanted to make a change. What were the things that you didn't stick with? What were the things that you didn't even try? What were the things that you tried that then you weren't, but you couldn't do it perfectly straight away and it made you afraid? What were the things where those toxic perfectionist claws, they really pulled you back? Maybe you worked really hard on a workshop because you wanted to test drive a new business idea, but you couldn't get that workshop or that website or that business offering perfect enough, so you never put it out there. Or you didn't dare calling that person or going to that meeting or that training or whatever it was because it was new and uncomfortable and you couldn't do it perfectly straight away, so you never went. Or you had a little bit of a start, but then it wasn't, you didn't feel good enough, or it wasn't perfect enough, or whatever your story is, again and again. You might even have noticed this trait in other areas of your life too. When you can't get it perfect straight away, or you had a stab and you weren't good at it, perfect at it straight away, or you were afraid of failure, la-di-da-di-da. What did that mean? You stopped doing it and it never became a practice, something that you kept going at. Am I inside of your head right now? That's a good thing. I cannot tell you how important it is that you realize this. Do you see how toxic perfectionism is literally the buffer between you and your dreams? It does not have to be. Replace your toxic perfectionism with consistency and keep going. Consistency is what's going to get you there, not your perfectionism. Okay? So remember, mindset shift number 1. Consistency is more important than perfection if you want to keep going with your career change and get what you want at the end. All right, let's move into mind shift number 2. And that is to replace perfect inaction with showing up consistently no matter what. Replace perfect inaction with showing up consistently no matter what. Now, since we're in the field of sports and fitness, let's stick with a fitness analogy here, because I know you can relate to these kind of analogies. So what does it take to not just get fit, but to stay fit? Who will get the best results? Let's talk about 2 types of people here. Who's the person who's going to get fit and stay fit? Is it the person who only turns up to the gym when they feel like they can do it perfectly? Or is it the person who turns up to the gym no matter what and then just do the best they can do on that given day, even if it's not perfect? So the person who insists on perfection and only will go if they can do it perfectly, or the person who turns up no matter what and just do the best you can, right? Who do you think is going to get fit and stay fit, right? I bet you know why I'm using this analogy here. Of course, right? Here's the thing. Perfectionists, they never show up no matter what. They never show up no matter what because they're so afraid it's not going to be perfect enough. They cannot deliver it perfectly or get it right straight away. And, oh my God, it's a bad day and there might be failure. No. The most common choice for perfectionists, whether, fitness, whatever the toxic thing is, in this case, we're talking about career change. The most common choice is perfect inaction, because it's better to keep your perfect image intact, right? You're already in a scenario now where you're probably really good at what you're doing and perfect. You have a lot of respect and you recognition within your industry maybe, and now you're going to have to try to do something differently. Oh my God, that's scary. Rather keep that perfect image intact, right? You tell yourself, but I'm going to wait until I feel like it, until I feel like I can do it perfectly, until I have all my ducks in a row. And therefore, your toxic perfectionism most frequently means perfect inaction rather than showing up and taking action no matter what. Can you relate to this? This, like I said, this is especially a problem if you are right now, even if you hate it and don't like it, you're right now in a career that you're very, very good at and very respected at. And therefore, the flip side is that means potentially now you are worried about doing anything that can be seen as not perfect. No wonder if you're exhausted, right? And you're stuck. So full transparency here. and you will know this if you listen to the Career Change podcast for a while, I do absolutely personally also have perfectionist tendencies, but I know when they work for me and when they don't. And I want to share a personal and really imperfect, embarrassing story, or maybe a little bit embarrassing fitness analogy actually here, when I realized that my need for perfection was actually holding me back from getting what I wanted. Just so we can really hone home these fitness analogies and then relate them to the career change process. Because I often find that analogies done in something you can relate to is really helpful for your career change. So I really had a wake-up moment in my early 40s when I started really prioritizing exercise and really deciding I wanted to have a fitness practice. I'm someone who has always walked and talked fast and been really energetic and never had any health issues. And therefore, I never really prioritized exercise. I was never a fitness bunny. I never really did a lot of exercise. But when I turned 40, I was like, whoa, I really got to do something about this exercise situation. Not because anything specific happened, but just because for longevity and health span and lifespan and all of that, it is really, really important. So I decided I'm going to find a type of exercise I really, really enjoy and get fit. And I came across this thing called barre, which is a mixture of ballet and dancing and weightlifting and fitness and this and that. And I had to really work hard to build up my fitness level because I'd never done fitness on a regular basis. And also all of these classes were full of, models and fitness people and dancers and very fit people. And, I walked in there and I did not have a fitness level. I kind of had to start from scratch. And as someone who's used to being very good at what I do in general, that was really hard, working up the fitness level there. Even though I had done some ballet in my teens. I used to do ballet for about 5-6 years in my teens. I had a teacher from the Russian Bolshoi ballet who used to beat me with a stick so I can get into great posture. So, I really wanted to please the teachers. I would, go in the front row and this and that, and really wanted to be good at this as soon as I could because there was so much intimidation in this class. But because I really wanted to be good because I'm a perfectionist, right? I wanted to be good straight away. I wanted to look good. I wanted my fitness level to get going really quickly. I kind of felt like as a perfectionist, I could only really go to these classes in person when I felt that I was at 100%. Like I really felt like it and I felt like I could do it perfectly, right? And if not, then I would stay at home because at least my perfect image was still intact, right? But then what happened is I started pushing myself to still go, even on days when I didn't feel like it. And even if I was still working on making it look good and getting the fitness level going and not being out of breath. And then, I started getting over myself. And then one day I really didn't feel like going. I started getting back into these real perfectionist tendencies, but I decided still to push through. And I went, and that's when I had an epiphany and a breakthrough. And then after my class, the teacher, who I absolutely adored, she took me aside and really wanted to impress. She took me aside and she said, Rikke, it's okay to turn up. Even when you don't feel like it, it's okay to turn up. Even when you cannot do it perfectly, it's okay to turn up. Even if you don't feel at 100%, just do the best you can. Just do the best you can with each exercise. Even if it's just 10%, it's better than not showing up at all. Bam. Permission given. And even though I was a work in progress, I, after that, kept going. Even if I didn't feel like it, even if it wasn't perfect, I actually told myself, you know what? I'm just going to experiment here. I'm going to just try to enjoy it and make that override my perfectionism. I'm just experimenting here and I'm doing the best I can. Hey, did I get fit? And did I get a butt that was better when I was 20? Heck yeah. That's what's great about barre class particularly. Anyway, let's relate this to your career change efforts. But I know that you know why I've given you these fitness analogies. It's because it is exactly the same thing with doing the things that it takes to change careers. So let me ask you this. How often, and this is the action bit of it, how often have you actually put off career change actions, business actions, activities, because you didn't feel like it? You didn't feel like you were up for it. You didn't feel like you could do it perfectly right away, or you didn't feel like you could do it perfectly that day, or you didn't actually feel like doing it. So instead, you chose perfect inaction, just like I chose to stay at home and not going to the class, right? Because you wanted to keep up the illusion of perfection. You are waiting to hopefully one day soon feel like it, or waiting to be able to do it perfect. That type of toxic perfectionism is toxic to especially the early stages of your career change, because there will be skills and exposures and behaviors that will be new to you that you've never done before, because if nothing changes, right? So you need to practice. You need to get to the stage where you have a practice. And here's really where I want you to remember the importance of practice again. It's more important for you to have a practice than perfectionism, because you need to show up again and again and again in order to learn and practice those new skills, in order to get used to doing those things you've never done before, in order to get over yourself and get over your perfectionism again and again and again. Even when you don't feel like it, even when you cannot do it perfectly, you need to turn up again and again and again, even and especially when you don't feel like it. This is so important. And also remember, all you're doing initially is test driving. It's not like everybody's watching or looking at you, okay? So you need to replace perfect inaction with showing up consistently, right? Even when you don't feel like it. I really want you to get the importance of this. You need to replace that perfectionism drive with showing up consistently no matter what. And really think of this fitness analogy. Whether you want to be fit, or whether you want to, get fit and stay fit, or whether you want to actually get started with your career change and keep going until you get what you want, what stands between you and that is practice. It's doing it again and again, showing up consistently and actually doing whatever deed it is you need to do that day, no matter what. There will be times when you don't feel like it. Do it still. And that you replace perfect inaction with showing up consistently. And let me tell you what's so beautiful about doing this. One of the things that you will learn when you start showing up for the things that truly matter to you, that you really want to change, and you show up again and again and again, and you actually start having a practice, as in something you do again and again and again on a regular basis, you start giving yourself proof that you can trust yourself. And that's how you build confidence and self-trust. And that is worthwhile, my friend. That is an incredible gift to give yourself. So remember these two mindset shifts. Number one, consistency is more important than perfection if you want to keep going with your career change. And I'll add, and actually get what you really want. Get to the stage where you change career to start that business. And number two, mindset shift number two, replace perfect inaction with showing up consistently no matter what. Here's what I really want you to take away. Remember this. Perfectionists give up more easily and earlier on in the process than others. That's why consistency is so much more important for you to focus on than perfection. If you actually want to keep going until you get what you want and finish it, launch that business, make that career change. Perfectionism is not a requirement for that, but consistency is. And also remember, what is required is an investment of time and to keep going, sticking with it. It takes time and imperfect action to create work that you love, work that's meaningful to you. I would recommend that you aim for a truly exciting, truly meaningful kind of career or business, not a perfect one. And it's an investment to get there. What is required and the price you must pay to get there is consistency. And that's the good news, right? The price of admission is not being exceptionally good or perfect at something new straight away, or being able to show up perfectly or only when you can do it perfectly. No, that's not required at all. What is required is just you showing up again and again and again and doing the best you can, especially when you don't feel like it. Because here's the thing, perfect inaction is not the way to make your dreams come true. And also, let me be really frank with you here, Rikke style, because here's what's really happening. If you cannot get asked, if you cannot get bothered to show up to the process of creating a career or business you will truly love, if you cannot get bothered to show up to the process of creating that again and again and again, and sticking with it, then no wondering it's not happening, because what you're literally doing is you're ghosting, you're standing up your dreams again and again and again. And they are worth so much more. Don't do that to either yourself or to them. You deserve a career or business you truly love, that excites you and that's meaningful. So let's make the switch. Here's what I'd love for you to do. Choose consistency, my friend. Choose consistency, meaningful consistency over toxic perfectionism, and watch your dream come true. One imperfect action at a time. Thank you so much for listening, my friend. If you need more help, come over to thecreatingpodcast.com and I'll see you there. Thank you.